Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is O-Sheena. I'm glad that you're here. So I'm going to be doing a video that kind of goes along with a video I did in the fall where I'm going to share fantasy books that I actually like. I did this with historical fiction as well, so I kind of like the idea of sharing books within genres that I don't read that often or that I've said I don't like, and sharing books that I actually do like within those genres or categories or whatever. So I thought about doing fantasy today, and so I'm going to share all of my favorite fantasy books and talk about why I like them. As you know, the theme of my channel is I like romance, and so mostly all of these fantasy books are basically fantasy romance. I just like the romance. And then also, I think all of these are young adult. So I've never read an adult fantasy, I don't think, or if I have, I don't remember and I didn't like it or whatever. These are the ones that I actually like. So I think I've talked about these books a fair amount on my channel, but I wanted one video where they all were. If you're interested in the historical fiction version of this video, I'll link it down below. And none of these books are probably going to be a surprise, but I will talk about why I like them. I think I'll quickly say why I don't really like fantasy most of the time. I think I just prefer stories that are set in reality because I really enjoy imagining what things would be like if they were really happening here and like how I would react. And with a fantasy story, like sometimes I like doing that, but most of the time it's like this would never happen, so what's the point? And then also sometimes I don't like trying to imagine a new world. I'd rather just have books that are set on Earth. And then sometimes I find magic annoying because it feels like there's no rules and it just lets you do whatever you want to make the story interesting, but like sometimes it doesn't make sense or whatever. Magic in general is a whole topic that you can have an opinion about, but I don't have a problem with it unless it goes like dark and demonic, you know? And then I do find a lot of fantasy have like battles and war, and I don't enjoy reading that very often. So okay, let's get to the books. So my first one is Heart of Red, Blood of Blue by Rebecca Belliston, and this book surprised me so much. I loved it when I read it. I think because I do enjoy reading kingdom stories, and usually if there's a kingdom, there's a fantasy setting, but not always. I've read lots of kingdom stories that are set in reality, but anyways, this one is a fantasy story, and yet it is set on Earth and in countries you would recognize, but all the names are changed. So I was okay with that. But this follows a girl, a princess, who is the last heir to the throne, and she ends up running away because her dad, the king, wants to marry her off to a really old king from another kingdom. And so you follow the girl running away and all of the people that she meets. There's like kingdom wars going on. There's an assassin killing her family, so she has to avoid that. And there's secrets, there's lots of stuff. It's a little bit more brutal. Like there is, you know, sword scenes and there's blood and stuff, but it's mild. I'd say this is like older YA, so it was fine. It's clean in the romance department as well. And the romance is light in this one, I would say, but I just like really enjoyed this adventure that the girl went on, and I found the writing really good, the world building really good, and I loved it, so it worked for me. Okay, next, this is a classic YA fantasy trilogy. It's The Remnant Chronicles, and The Kiss of Deception is the first book. This was super hyped a couple years ago on BookTube, and I read it and loved it as well. This story follows a totally made up place, so this is one of those things where it worked for me. It's a totally made up world. There's maps in the books so you can like picture. I don't even recognize, this is like a totally made up continent too. I don't recognize that land structure, so. But you follow this princess who's also on the run. I tend to like following princesses that like refuse to submit and they go off on their own and make a way for themselves. So yeah. And this one is fun because you get multiple perspectives. You get the girl's, the princess's perspective, and then you also get the prince's perspective that she was supposed to marry but she ran away from. And then you also get the assassin's perspective that is sent to assassinate her. So 3 perspectives, and they don't tell you which guy is which. So as she's interacting with them, you don't know if she's interacting with the prince or the assassin, and that was really fun. And I just found the progression of, first of all, this princess is used to luxury and she has to like pretend to be, well, she doesn't pretend, she actually becomes like, not a chambermaid, but she like works at a restaurant basically, and she like is really good at it, and she's willing to just like live a quiet life so that she doesn't have to marry when she doesn't want to. There is a little bit of magic in here, and that's that I found that this magic walked the line, but it wasn't there very much, so I was okay with it. But it did just kind of have magic that like comes from within, or like, you know, comes from the depths, is like, and it's, I don't know. Do you know what I mean? Like magic with a wand, whatever. But magic is that like, do you know what I mean? I don't know. It just like feels too demonic, I guess. I don't like that word, but it is what it is. It's just a descriptive word for the type of magic that it's kind of in this, but it's very mild and it doesn't play a huge part. It's just a vibe. It's some kind of vibe, whatever. I read past it. I liked it. Fun story. Love this trilogy. It's great. Okay, the next trilogy that I love is, it's called the Cursebreakers trilogy, and this is the first book, A Curse So Dark and Lonely by Bridget Kemmerer. This was super big on BookTube as well. I'm definitely just another voice saying, yes, I love this trilogy. I think this first book is the strongest, and the third book is probably my least favorite, but I just think the story was so great. I really enjoyed watching these characters work together and fight for the good of everyone, and just, it was just a fun story. Again, this one has magic that walks the line for me, and there's like an evil witch in this book, and she really is evil, and it's like, but because she's portrayed as completely evil and not redeemable, I'm okay with it. It's when the evil like tries to work for you and like you try to like control it and manipulate it, that's where it's like, no, that can't happen. But because she's like fully evil, everyone hates her, I'm okay with it. Does that make sense? But this one is set in our real world, kind of, because you follow a girl from Earth, but she gets like pulled into another dimension that is a completely made up place, and she has to marry the prince, but she doesn't want to, and she doesn't have to marry him, she has to fall in love with him, and he has a curse on him where he turns into this monster, and she has to try to fall in love with him so that the curse will be broken. And I really found, this is like almost a slow story because it's really about the relationship between the characters and just her time in the palace, and again, another palace book. I just really enjoyed watching her figure out this new place, get to know these people, and she was a very strong character. A lot of these books have like strong female characters that fight against the expectations that are put on them, and I just really enjoy reading about that. These all follow female characters. That's amazing. The next one is Red Queen by Victoria Aveyard. I think an unpopular opinion on this one because I really liked this series. It's a 4-book series, and I just like from the end of this book with the plot twist that it literally, I had no idea. And I was hooked by then. Book 2 is slow, but I loved book 3 and 4, and it's great. So this one is fun. It's a completely made up world, although actually I think is there a map here? In some of the books there's a map, and I think it is a map of Earth basically, but everything is renamed, if I remember correctly. So this one is fun because there's 2 different types of blood. You can have red blood or white or silver blood. And the silver bloods have powers, and the powers are like really cool. And so the silver bloods rule over the red bloods, and you follow this girl who has red blood, but she like makes her way into the palace and something happens and it causes quite the stir, and I don't even know. Oh yes, she discovers an ability she didn't know she had. So basically she ends up with a superpower too, and they're like, how's this possible? She has red blood. They make her pretend to be silver blood. And so she's in the palace now. There's 2 princes, and it's really good. Definitely brutal though. Some of the powers that people can have are brutal to each other, and the queen is the scariest character I've ever read. So superpowers is one of my buzzwords. I love books that have superpowers in them, so this one hit all of that. And then plus I just fell in love with the characters, so I liked the series too. Okay, now we're going into the realm of my paranormal romance phase. So, yes, I was into vampires for a while. I don't know how I would feel about these books now, but when I think about them, I'm like, they were like great though. So I'm just gonna show them, and if you don't like vampires, that's okay. So Vampire Academy by Rochelle Mead was my favorite series after Twilight. Basically for my first 4 years of university, I read this series. This is a 6-book series. I loved it. So this is set in the real world. There's 3 different types of vampires, which is so fun. So there's bad vampires with no morality. There's good vampires with morality. And then there's half human, half vampires that protect the good vampires. And then there's humans, and they have to stay hidden. All the vampires have to stay hidden from humans, and they have a whole system of how they do that. And you follow these teenage vampires in high school figuring life out. And there's romance, of course. And it was a good time. Definitely a good time. Also, there is a spin-off series called Bloodlines. That is another 6-book series, and this one I think is equally good. Now this one has witches in it, and they like cast spells, and there's, yeah, spells. So that's like pretty close to reality. That is like, but because it was set with vampires, I took it as all of it is completely fiction, and none of it has to have any power, I guess you could say. It's like just a fun story to read. So that's why I was okay with it. And really the romance is great, and really the plot is great. Like I almost would say the plot of Bloodlines is better than Vampire Academy. So anyways, I also loved these books. It's been a long time, but I used to reread these 2 series a lot. Okay, I did mention Twilight, and I will say Twilight is a fantasy series that I also enjoyed. Just like pure fun vampire story. I don't read stuff like this anymore, but it's definitely a part of my reading journey, and I appreciate it. And then lastly, I do enjoy Harry Potter as well. This is the thing with like the wands and stuff that I'm just like, it's just all made up and fun, okay? So I enjoy these books, and it is what it is. I like that it's set in the real world and that they have to like hide from humans, and I just like that dynamic. So yeah, this one follows a boy, so there you go. All the other ones followed girls though. So there is one book that I don't have to hold up. It's called Fortune's Fall by Catherine Garger. I forget the author, but I'll write it down below. So this book is a Christian fantasy book, and this book is similar to Divergent in like what it's about. So you follow the society where each person is like set to be in a role for the society, and the girl that you follow, her role is to be a dream interpreter of the president, and so she is like an apprentice to the current dream interpreter. So they go to interpret the president's dream, and she sees it, and she like knows what it's saying, but the dream interpreter tells the president something different, and so she realizes that he's got like an agenda, and basically she ends up on the run. I don't mind stories with characters who are on the run. She ends up on the run, and she joins like a Christian group of people, but it's like you can't trust anyone. And yeah, everyone has a role, but she like breaks out of the society on the run. There's Christians that are trying to like get out of there, and this is the first book in a series. I've only read this one, but it was good, and if you can find it, I would recommend it. So those are all of the fantasy books that I like. I don't read fantasy that often, and when I do, I don't like it that easily. So based on the books that I do like, I would love some recommendations. These are all YA as well, and it's been a while since I've read a YA book that I really love, other than The Delusion, I guess. But that's like Christian paranormal, so I didn't include that because to me, it's not fantasy, it's real. So there you go. I'd also love to hear what other genres you would want me to do. But yeah, I have done historical fiction already, so again, I'll link it down below. I'll have the books written down below, and I'd love to hear your recommendations. So thank you for watching this video, you guys. I'll see you in my next one. Bye. And I don't even remember what it's about, and also my throat is dry. So great. And they're in a relationship, which is so great. So this one is fun because how the author used, like, is this even fantasy? Sure.